This is part 2 talking about the ego, and consequently I found out I could not explain ego without explaining spirit, and I couldn't explain spirit until I understood more what spirit was. I needed to also explain consciousness, the aspects of free will, and even go into some cosmology. I had said in the previous video this part 2 was going to be a screen recording going over some gurus of ego, Ryan Holiday, Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, maybe a few other people. That's going to be in part 3. I have to postpone that because in the past 24 hours I've been hard at work, very hard at work discovering the errors in my conceptualization of what spirit is. Not so much ego, but more spirit, void, my different understandings. And let's just say I've made a big software update. I put in a lot of work and I've come up with a lot of really good answers I think you will thoroughly enjoy, and I'm feeling a great sensation of pride and happiness at what I've discovered today. I've figured out some answers I've personally been trying to figure out for a long, long time. Basically, what is the most elemental element, well, the fundamental element, elemental fundament, oh my goodness, now I'm just making a fool out of myself, of what spirit actually is. And I believe at this point I have figured it out. And I'm very happy with that. But what I'm going to do in this video is actually show you my thinking process. So I'm going to go over a lot of my notes and show you how over the course of the day I changed my thinking, because a lot of my notes is just asking myself questions, trying to answer them of my own accord, and then I'll get a chat bot and I'll talk to it, see if it finds any errors or it offers any kind of value that I can then take and then put into my new model and think it through, and then still have questions and I say, well, I still haven't answered that, I haven't considered this, my model's not right. Because as I was editing the part 1 video of ego yesterday, that I made yesterday, but I was editing today, I was realizing, I think I've made some errors with what I was saying. For instance, when I said spirit is will, well then when you think about it, spirit is not will. Spirit has no will at that point, just like a baby has no will yet. Free will is only present when there is consciousness, and there can only be consciousness present if there is ego present, if there is that self-conceptualization. And then over the course of today, I've figured out more details of how those specifics actually work and integrate and connect to each other. So I'm going to go through my thinking process, and a lot of the beginning is wrong. There's lots of errors, but that's how you come to find truth, is by going through a process of creating errors. You say, is it this? Is it this? Is it that? Is it that? How do you make the light bulb? Will this material conduct electricity? Will this, oh, it's this one. Okay. So to find an answer, you've got to go through lots of different errors. And those errors can be useful, or they might even still be part truths, just not the full truth. And yes, I still have more work to do. But as I state and as I prove via my actions, I change my mind, and I want to be a power of inspiration to you, the viewer, to show not to be married and stubborn to your ideas. If there is room to improve, you improve. When you're certain about something, you're certain. You can become more certain, but when you have a belief or an idea that you're working with, as I always state, hey, this is a speculation, this is untested theory, this is my belief, this is an idea I'm working on, well, those ideas update and change. And still, it's always good to test your certainty on what you think you are certain on, because you can be certain and you can be wrong. We are fallible beings because we have free will, and in the conceptual level we can make mistakes. So I wanted to make a correction yesterday where I said spirit is action potential. Action potential is a specific type of scientific process that isn't really relevant to spirit. You might say potential actual. Just by reversing those two words, it does have a different meaning than action potential. I can't even remember what action potential is off the top of my head, but correction, that's not what I mean when I talk about spirit, not exactly. And I wrote, is spirit will? Is it? Or is that more of an egoic thing? And, well, ruined the surprise, but I found out, no, spirit is not will. That's not what spirit itself is. And again, it totally depends on the sense you are referring to spirit, which we'll come to later, because I realized that. It's like people use it in all these different senses. It means different things to different people. What sense am I using it? What do I mean when I'm using this? And I realized I was basically equivocating, using the term in multiple different senses, just like many other people equivocate on the term ego, and they use it interchangeably to mean the psyche self, I, me, but also expressly arrogance. They surgically remove one aspect of ego and conflate it purely with arrogance. It's like this equivocation that happens. More detail later. But well, the point I said that, why I brought that up was because I realized I was making that error with the way I was using spirit. I was like, okay, okay, got to be objective here. Correct the errors. So I wrote, there is only will when there is consciousness, only consciousness when the self, the ego, has developed, only intelligence when there is consciousness, conscious free will choices. Again, it depends on the type of intelligence you mean, because you could say a seed or an acorn has intelligence inbuilt and then it develops into a tree. I mean a conscious intelligence, not because you can get into lots of different territory. Would you consider AI intelligent for what it can do? An animal, a seed, an acorn, etc. So we're not going there right now. So my thoughts then went to say spirit is unconscious intelligence. A program like an AI or a seed or a sperm or an egg or a fetus. That's what I was thinking. Spirit is unconscious intelligence, because you could call those things unconscious intelligence. Intelligence as in they are an integration of different things which, when put together over a period of time, they process, or there is a process that happens where they transform and become more than they were. They change, or they can do things that change. They're useful, productive, beneficial, changing, modulating. And I was thinking spirit is an identity with eternally determined potential, just like an egg or a seed or a sperm is something that is predetermined. Well, that also depends on your cosmological perspective on this world. I can't go off into too many tangents, so we'll narrow it down. Limit our focus. I'll tell you why I winked later. Keep you in suspense. I was thinking that spirit is shapeable life force energy. Depending on where it is implanted, depends on how it grows and what it forms. And I wrote, a rock or a man. Spiritual energy put into a baby creates an ego, into the ground makes rocks. So at that point I was thinking, spiritual energy is that one underlying substrate, monism kind of thing, monadic kind of element that you could kind of equate it to string theory. It's a particular thing, resonates at a different frequency, and then it could create rocks, or it could create a human body, could create consciousness. Maybe there still is some kind of truth to that theory. Perhaps. That perhaps is a bit more of a scientific study. And then I was also thinking, spirit is the space where things are. The things are the objects, animate and inanimate objects. They contrast each other, animate being a living thing compared to an inanimate, something that is not living. A tree is animate, living at a low level compared to us, but a wooden table is inanimate, not living. They contrast each other. You only have living or animate in comparison to dead or inanimate, not living. A rock. They need each other. Duality is necessity. What is necessary is duality. They define each other on all poles. Contradictions are the chinks in your armor. It is where you will be exploited. You don't want to have contradictions. So that's what I'm always doing when I'm error checking, is looking for contradictions. And I needed to say, consciousness is awareness of awareness. That is a way to explain consciousness, or a very quick way. Yeah, it's accurate. That's what it actually is. Awareness of awareness. We'll go much more into consciousness throughout this video. Consciousness, and the reason why I'm bringing consciousness, because to understand ego properly, I think you need to understand spirit, which means you need to understand consciousness, free will. I didn't realize how interconnected all these things were to understand ego, because the mainstream has a very, very limited, narrow-ranged focus on what the ego is. They try to take this humongous thing and then just conflate it away with arrogance. Interchangeably, oh, that's all ego is. My goodness, you're getting it wrong, people. There is so much more to that. To understand ego properly, you have to understand all these other things. Because if you don't understand what ego is, you can't understand what consciousness is. Because consciousness is dependent upon ego. That's what it is. It's object awareness in relationship to the self, and the self is ego. For instance, you can test this out right now. You look around your room and everything you see, you have an instant conscious understanding of what it is and how it relates to you. So I'm in an Airbnb hotel apartment at the moment. So not everything is mine. Some things are mine in here and other things are not. So I can look around the room and instantly know that TV is not mine. But I look at it and I know consciously that's a TV. I know how that relates to me. Oh, you can watch it. There's TV shows. I could plug my laptop in with HDMI. I could use it. There's an art painting. What's that for? Well, it's for beauty. It's for looking at it and getting some kind of enjoyment. It's not mine. I can look at this lip balm and I know why that's there. Because when I talk, I get the dry lips. That's no good. I'm constantly licking my lips, even though I'm probably doing that. Oh, I brought your attention to that. You're going to be watching me like a hawk doing that. Oh, I'm so self-conscious and shy about that. Oh, but I can look at that and I can relate it back to me. What purpose it has to me. Nail clippers, that's mine. Tweezers, that's mine. Oh, floss sticks. You've got to have floss sticks. They are so good. And these floss sticks are absolutely amazing. This has lasted months. I cannot believe it. Months. I bought them in Mexico. I think they're an American brand. Absolutely fantastic. Every day gets used. Other brands of floss sticks, use them once, they break. I should start selling floss sticks. So that's what your consciousness is. That's awareness of all these objects in the physical world relating to the self. Not just the physical world, but it could be a feeling you have in your body. A psychological feeling or an impulse, a desire, a repulsion, a thought, a sensation. Consciousness is that relational awareness of object to subject. You being the subject as the ego. That's why you're not conscious when you're a baby. That's why you're not conscious when you're in a dream. That's why you weren't conscious in the spirit realm, in the void. You weren't conscious there because there was no ego there. That's why you ended up here. Because think about it, if you were conscious before you came to this world, why would you come to this world? You wouldn't come to this world, you'd go to a better world, you'd build a better world. You'd only come to this world if you had no choice, because you had to. You were forced and you had no power to control what you were doing because you didn't exist. You were created here as the ego. You are the ego. And that's who you are right now. And then reincarnation and spirit and blah, blah, blah. We'll come back to that. If someone isn't familiar with my work, they're like, hold on, he's talking about ego. Why does he bring up reincarnation? What's that got to do with it? Little do you know. Little do you know. Sometimes I make the mistake of assuming that people who watch my videos are familiar with my work. You may not be. Well, catch up. I've got lots of theories, there's too much to explain. I'm going to pretend I didn't even say that. A little bit of humor. Let's move on. Oh, but also at the same time, consciousness makes immediate judgments. Neutral, positive, negative. I can look around, pretty much everything in this room is either neutral or positive. But if I was walking down the street and I see police, I go threat, negative. Can make an instant snap judgment. And I'm conscious of that. I direct my focus, boom, I see that, and I'm aware of my awareness of that object, and I'm aware of my awareness as a subject. There's multi-layers of awareness happening there. That's what consciousness is. It's a reaction or a response that happens between objects and an ego. Ego being the subject. It's like a chemical reaction almost that happens. A magnetic, a physical law, a magnetic repulsion. It's just something that happens. That's what consciousness is. There's lots more to explain about consciousness, but when you think about it, as a baby, or as a spiritual entity, you could call yourself as a baby, or just as a human being, right? A spiritual entity. You are the potential for many things. Who you become is your potential restricted to your personal desires. What you choose to become according to your desires, what you want, what you don't want. And then this is where my thinking went, which I think is wrong. Because what I said is, everything in reality is spirit. And my thoughts basically went to a train of thinking, which I think I might just summarize right now. My thoughts went to believing that spirit is just a synonymous word with reality or existence, and that spirit simply means everything that there is. In the physical, non-physical, every layer of reality and dimension, object, relationship, and by relationship I mean like above, below, next to, inside, outside, that kind of relationship, adjacent. Attributes like color and shape of something or temperature. I was thinking spirit gets synonymously used with that. But then I went through that whole line of thinking and I was like, well, perhaps that's not so accurate. And even if it was, we don't need that word. It makes the word spirit useless then, because we can just say all of existence or existence. Or, because when you use the term existence, you mean everything that exists. Or reality. Reality is another word to mean everything that exists. The way I use reality is all layers. Everything that is real. And so what I was thinking was, if spirit is just everything, well, how do I use it? And other people use it. Other people and I also refer to spirit as beings, like real beings in the world, as opposed to NPCs. I normally use the term RSB, a real spiritual being, as opposed to an NSB, a non-spiritual being. An RSB to denote one that is intelligent, self-aware, has ego, and is rational, conscious, and a free-willed individual, as opposed to an NPC, an unintelligent, semi-asleep, or fully asleep, with no real ego, that is a rational, semi-conscious or unconscious determined entity, some kind of collective hive-minded creature that is more a thing, a something than a someone. So that's where my thoughts were going. But then I thought, well, perhaps the spirit is the animating life force essence of true beings. Then again, what does that really mean? But then I thought, well, what are the NPCs made out of? If spirit is everything, well, the NPCs are still made out of spirit, but they're just distinctly different to RSBs, and so I was kind of confusing myself with where I was going with this. And I was thinking spirit is the eternal all, space and time and everything within it. Because I was thinking of what I believe, what I've heard other people believe, personally, and mainstream interpretations, alternative interpretations and understandings of spirit. So I was trying to compile and integrate all of those perspectives into a coherent, single, factual understanding of the concept of spirit, what it actually means. And so it took me a lot of time. But I hope it's useful to see my thinking process, because hopefully it might spark your thinking process as well. The spark, wake up your spirit inside. Because if you believe the spirit is the eternal source of all things, which it commonly gets referred to as, and the most true aspect of reality, then where did this world and materiality and everything else come from if not there? Right? So if you think that, if you believe that, spirit is the real true essence, well, how can this material world be anything but of spirit? An emanation or an extension, a creation of spirit. So, okay, that's interesting. Because then you say, well, spirit must be the cause of this effect, if this world is an effect of the cause. Because also trying to figure out what's more primal, what's more fundamental. The higher dimensions, higher, you have to refer to it somehow, higher dimensions of the astral realm and the void, these other real places that I haven't experienced personally, but many other people have experienced, and I compiled lots of their experience, and the most common things are similarities between all NDEs, OBEs, ADEs, etc. Lots of acronyms there. I got a video about that, you can check it out. And then actually looking at, I've got other playlists where we look at, there's a compilation of other people's testimonies of them actually experiencing it. I've got my video I made of compiling all the similarities where I'm just speaking. There's other people like Mark from Forever Consciousness Research Channel, all he's many videos narrating over their experiences. So we've got this data explaining these different worlds where people astral project or experience outside of their physical body. And so I'm trying to integrate and work with all the data, all the facts that I've got. And the facts I've got, the ideas, the beliefs, using logic, trying not to make any contradictions, trying to use a bit of imagination and reason, extrospecting, so trying to put all my cognitive powers together to come up with a coherent, cogent theory. Because some people try to say that this world is completely disconnected and totally separate from spirit. So I keep going on, I'm going to skip some of this. I'm just talking to myself in my notes here, questioning spirit, saying that everything is of spirit and that it's kind of delusional to believe that things cannot be of spirit, everything is of spirit. I am of spirit now, you're of spirit now, etc. That's where my line of thinking and reasoning was going. And I was like, well, the term spirit is a pointless, useless term then if it just means everything. We're not getting anything useful out of it. And I thought only the non-existent, the logically impossible is not of spirit, because that's nothing at all. And then I said, so what you want isn't to be more spiritual because you already are as spiritual as it gets. And so this is some good that came out of this, even though I think this is mostly an error. I said, what you want isn't to be more spiritual, but it's to be happier. It's to be more conscious and to have greater knowledge of reality and thus have more power to fulfill your desires, to avoid pain and experience pleasure, to learn truth and unlearn fiction, to reject contradictions and accept facts, have more specificity in your life and less vagueness, more precision and less ambiguity, less generality and more accuracy, less chaos and more order. And so I really like that part. That was very cool. And so that's what came out of a whole bunch of errors, incorrect thinkings, or inaccurate identification of a word to the concept. Because, I'll say it again, spirit does not mean everything that exists. Well, again, that's my current level of understanding. I think I've narrowed it down to something more specific, but time will tell. I continued on and I said, if by spirit you simply mean non-physical, sometimes people mean, when they use the term spirit, I want to be more spiritual, I want to be more non-physical, I want to be a higher vibration, I want to be not so dense, less dense, more airy, fairy, floaty, floaty, in a good way. And sure, that's fine, that's cool. Why would you lose or want to lose your ego simply by being non-physical? People say they want to be more spiritual, they want to be less ego. And if they use the term spirit to mean more non-physical, well, why would you becoming non-physical mean you have to lose your ego or you want to lose your ego? That doesn't make sense because your ego already is non-physical. Your ego is your mental, psychological self-concept. It's non-physical. It's just your body here, which is physical. Your biological avatar here, which you could call the tool which built your ego. You needed it. You needed it. It was a necessity, a requirement to build your ego and to become conscious of your spirit. Without your body, you couldn't have become conscious of your spirit. Without your body, you couldn't be you. Which are later realizations I had. If you identify with your mind more than your body, that's fine. Like you already are non-physical. My identification is, sure, I identify with this body because as I'm here in this world, I am living in this body. That's why I want to look after it. I want to look after it well. I don't want to live forever in this world, so I'm not absolutely perfect, but I want to feel good and look good. But I also understand biological death will happen, but it doesn't mean the death of me. I will have a new body at that point. And if you look at all those testimonies, it's a different kind of body. An etheric body or a light body, whatever you want to call it. It's still a body, but it's a different kind of body. Even then, in the void, you could almost say you still have a body, even when you are completely disembodied. A body being a circumference to you, like a boundary to what you are that separates you from an environment and all the other individuals in that environment, whether it's in this world, the astral dimension, or a void-like state. The body comes in different forms. Non-physical, completely non-physical, like in the void, maybe it's called that the highest vibration, and then the astral dimension, perhaps more dense than the void, but very high vibration compared to down here on Earth. Very dense from what we've been told from many, many testimonials, pre-birth memories, ADEs, after-death experiences, OBEs, out-of-body experience. Again, if all you call spirit is non-physicality, you are already in that mind. You are, your mind, your psyche, your ego, and because people always complain about this world, understandably so, but it's not their ego they want to get away with. Or you shouldn't want to get away from your ego or your mind or your psyche. If you do, well, you need to fix that stuff, because that's in your sight, inside of your control to fix. You only have yourself to blame for that. Well, actually, no, that's not true. You mostly have yourself to blame for that. You can blame a lot of other people for causing all this grief and ruckus and chaos in the world, but you can fix it. You just need to decide to do it and keep on working on it. Keep on focusing on the solutions. And, well, you have to focus on the problems, but you also have to focus on the solutions. You can't just focus on solutions because you don't know what the problems are, so you don't know what type of solutions you should come up with. But basically, what people want is a better body and a better world. That's what we really want. We want a body that feels less pain, and we want a world that's less chaotic and evil. That's ultimately what we want. So don't complain about your ego. There's nothing to complain about there. Your ego is you. Whatever you want, whether it's to stop identifying, to return back to spirit, that's you. That's your ego that wants that. You can't think. You can't be conscious without your ego, because that is the entity, the thing, which is making that happen. So here I came up with some common usages of the term spirit. This is really useful to understand because it gets used in like literal and then metaphorical senses. But say a metaphysical monism is one view of the spirit as the underlying one amorphous substrate of all reality that is then morphable into everything else. Imagine the dark computer screen, it's black, and then each one of those pixels can form a color. And those colors together form shapes. And those shapes can then move and do stuff. Like I was playing a game earlier and it's just fascinating. That's what's happening. I've got this screen and it looks 3D. I've got soldiers over here, I've got the ground under here, there's tanks over there, there's ships flying over here, and they're shooting stuff, and all this stuff's happening. It's a full world that's happening on a screen, like a two-dimensional screen. It's quite fantastic, really. And you think about it, all those pixels are just blank spaces that can be illuminated with a color. And when those colors get put together, they form shapes. The body of a soldier, the ground, the smoke of an explosion, fire from a gun. And it's amazing how they all interact. And in a way, maybe that's exactly what's happening in this world and all other worlds as well, in a very similar kind of way. So that's why with that understanding of spirit being everything, you could view it like that, as a metaphysical monad or a monism of this one underlying amorphous, so a non-shape or a changing shape, or that blank mental space in your mind that can then morph into anything via, basically, you could just say color in a way, or color actually has so much to do with it when you start to think about it. Like that's what things are. Even if you're colorblind, it's like shades then. Dark or, yeah, when you're blind, you just can't see. Just having some interesting revelations as I'm thinking. You can relate reality so much to a computer screen. It's such a good an analogy. And your mental space. You can think of the whole world and universe and all of reality by contrasting and comparing these different things, the computer screen to your mind, to the world, to the void, a simulation, a dream, everything that you experience, and say, for instance, see, as opposed to hearing and touching and all that, just seeing because it's our strongest sense. It's like pixels. This is fun. I'm having a jolly good time, getting excited and carried away. Another way that spirit gets used is as a divine or universal principle, as in the mind of God. And this God is separate to you, it's superior to you, it created you, it's above you, it's not you, but somehow you are part of it, but you're separate as well. That's another way spirit gets used, the Holy Spirit in religions. It also gets referred to as the soul or the immortal essence, the aspect of you that survives death to continue existing in some way, whatever belief one has, whether it's Christianity and going to heaven, or if it's a Buddhism that maybe reincarnates or can escape to nirvana or some other plane, depending on the perspective. Spirit also gets used in the frame of as a life force or animating energy, an invisible vitality that makes organisms alive. It could also be called like prana or chi or ki. That could be interchangeable with spirit of a spiritual energy that animates the life. It's like when someone dies, their body is still there, but their life force, their spirit has gone from their body if you see them lying in an open casket. Next, you have as a psychological metaphor, a person's attitude, mood, or motivation. They're high-spirited. They have the spirit of adventure in them. So, no wonder it's confusing with spirit. Look how many ways it gets used. You also have a supernatural entity, a ghost or a demon or some other non-corporeal being that can act in the world like a spirit. Ghosts or spirits in here. So it gets used in that way. And then you have a creative inspiration, the source of artistic or intellectual insight, like the muse's spirit. You have a collective attitude or ethos, the shared spirit of the times, or a culture or group identity, like team spirit. And then you have other usages, like how I was using it as a real spiritual being as opposed to an NPC, an artificial fake person. A spiritual being is someone who is real, conscious, free-willed, intelligent, is actually here, real. They'll last. And then you could also add other elements that, they've got a soul, an immortal essence. They'll last after biological death, etc. And then also spirit, I was using it in different ways before as that blank space, that state of readiness or emptiness, observational nothingness, like the pixels on the screen, or that blank space in your mind, or the void. I was calling that spirit, so it's no wonder it's confusing. We've got to get more specific here. You can separate the metaphors from the literal usages. So the metaphors would be like the collective attitude, the creative inspiration, psychological metaphor, person's attitude. But then you have the literal versions of it, and you want to figure out, which one actually is it? What makes the most sense? Perhaps what I've realized is I just figured out one other way of calling it, which I'll save that for the end. But maybe some of these other terms are also valid. And I was asking myself, how was I referring to spirit? I was mainly using it as potential life force energy that is eternal and required for ego and consciousness. An eternal energy which exists in the highest and most fundamental dimension and is capable of bonding with entities to create an ego. That's what I was thinking. I was imagining some highest or basest dimension, whatever way you want to think about highest or most base, fundamental dimension of existence, like the void, and that's where spirit is. It's some kind of energy in a way. And other beings who are already living, like the light, take this energy from it, boom, and shove it into bodies. And they use it as a building material, like clay, and they build stuff with it. It's the building force of everything, or the animating principle to life. I was kind of thinking, maybe it's both. And it just depends on what, maybe you could, spirit is that energy which can shape rivers and rocks and mountains, but also trees and dogs and cats and birds and humans and aliens and reptids and mantids and all sorts of different things. Maybe. I think it's good to consider. It's good to have these ideas in your mind at the very least. Whether you accept or reject these ideas, have that idea because it might become useful down the line at some point to integrate into some other piece of information you have, so then you can have a bigger picture of whatever you're focusing on at the time. But one aspect of thought was that spirit is specifically a life force energy that comes from a higher dimension that's bonded to intelligent structures. And that intelligent structure could be an entity like a biological human, a baby, or it could be an alien, a grey, a reptilian, a mantis, other alien. It could be animals. So spirit gets shoved into an animal, as a baby, as a puppy, as a kitten, as a little grey baby alien, or a little reptilian baby alien. But also in a way, animals can be considered aliens to us, less intelligent alien species living on the same world amongst us. Interesting way to think of it. Or maybe you could put spiritual energy into a metal android or a liquid metal terminator, a different kind of body, unknown. It's kind of guesswork at this point. Because it's unknown. When I say it's unknown, I don't know at this point. I don't want to say unknown totally, because maybe someone knows. That would be very arrogant of me to presume that it's completely unknown, because I don't know what everyone in the world knows. I only know what I know, and what lots of other people I've studied know. But I don't know if only spiritual life can become conscious and free-willed. Like, can you build an artificial intelligence that becomes conscious, has an ego, has free will, has desire, acts exactly in a real way to us, but can also detach from its body and enter into different dimensions? Like, is that possible? I don't know. Or is it only possible for beings where their spiritual life force energy has come from some other dimension, is integrated, meshed and merged into a vessel, a body, a container in this world? I'm not sure. It's definitely something to think about. So then I kept on thinking about the void and the spirit, because that's where my mind keeps going back to. That space that people describe. If you haven't watched any of those testimonies, you're going to be so confused watching this. It's probably recommended to watch testimonies of people actually explaining the void before you watch this kind of content. Otherwise, watch this content and then you have to study and understand and research the void of how people explain that experience. That is crucial to understanding reality. If you have any interest in actually understanding reality, you want to understand that layer of reality as well, because it's completely different to this layer. And we've got people who are actually telling us their stories, and we're seeing the similar patterns between all their stories of what happens, what it's like. Basically, they just explain it as a mind space. Like, imagine you close your eyes, you've got not just closed eyes, but totally can't see anything, totally can't hear anything, touch anything, smell, there's like a totally different experience of sensations. It's like being totally in the mind, in a way. This blank space, but they're still conscious. Very much so, from what they say. And my line of thought was going that void is spirit, but it's unmanifested spirit. Just like the blank computer screen or the blackboard is unmanifested. Nothing. It's readiness, potential space for something to be drawn on it, for the pixels to illuminate a color, to form shapes and figures, backgrounds and scenery and imagery. In your mental space, you can have a black space in your mind and then picture a talking dolphin in the shape of a humanoid form. Oh, I bet you've never imagined that. That's a strange thing to imagine. Like, has your humanoid dolphin got legs, or has it got a tail and it's just standing upright? Like, has it got a dolphin head, or is it like a human, half dolphin head? Oh, this is getting a bit weird. Dolphin people. You can imagine that in your mind on the blank space, but then you could also go into it, and now that dolphin is standing on a pier and there's ocean everywhere, and you're like completely submerged or immersed in that imagery. Whereas you can step back in your mind space and have black and then dolphin there. And then you could have kitten with red collar and a little cute red bow. Black kitten, red bow. Oh, I want a black kitten with a red bow next to the dolphin, but it's both on a black space. So the black cat is actually like blending in. It's hard to see. If you make it a white cat now, you see it stands out more from the black background. But you can also make that background white inside your mind. Make it all white background. Now make the cat black. Now it stands out more. Again, you can then have a fully immersed scenery of standing in front of a waterfall. And that's all you're seeing. That's like the whole circumference and totality of your mind space. You can picture that. Well, I hope you can. Because I think some people might not actually be able to do that. So perhaps it was good for me to explain that. Comment below if you can actually do that and you could follow along and you didn't just think I'm a madman. You're saying, what is he doing here? I can't do that. That's not possible. I hope you can. Tell me if you can. I want to know. Because I've heard some people don't have an inner monologue. But what about visualization? I think there actually is some kind of disorder. It's got a specific name where people can't visualize. The term is aphantasia. Aphantasia. It's the inability to generate visual images in the mind's eye. Wow. I wonder what that means. Does that mean someone's not of spirit? Are they like an AI, an NPC? Or is it just they've got like some neurological condition? Their brain's affecting them. Just like someone who's blind, for example. Or can't hear, is deaf. Oh, it's interesting. Well, then again, if someone was born blind, they may have spirit. If you're using spirit to mean animating life force energy that comes from a different dimension and enables one to build a soul and ego and to be able to travel with their ego, their sense of self and memories and personality throughout different dimensions. If you mean by that, you might have someone who's blind who is of spirit in that use of the term, but they can't visualize anything because they've never seen anything. They can't visualize inside their mind. Phew, that's wacky. So to contrast, you have the unmanifested spirit, this line of thinking, and you have manifested. So blank in the mind, unmanifested, boom, I just manifested a cat, a kitten. Manifested a dolphin humanoid, a pier, a rainforest, a waterfall, jungle, ocean, or the computer screen. It just, whatever it's showing is manifestation. Because that's what I was leaning more towards in the prior video, part 1. That spirit is the unmanifested, and then the ego is the actualized potential. I don't know if that's accurate enough, specific enough, or if that is error in of itself. Because where my line of thought was before today was that everything emanates from the void. That's a traditional belief. Say, for instance, Gnosticism, pretty much every religion's. You have the monad, the god, whatever, some higher dimension, and something happens, boom, and then this is a result. This is an effect. It was the cause. It was primary. It came first, some other dimension, and then this world came. And so part of my questioning is to figure out, is that true? Did this world come first? Did this world come first? Did that world come first? There does seem to be different worlds. Worlds, by worlds I mean, like say, dimensions. Earth, astral dimension, void, which one came first? Is there a first, or are they just all simultaneous? Have they all always existed in some shape or form or color? Just as the blind man cannot visualize anything because he's never seen anything, spirit in the void, devoid of physicality, can't imagine anything. You can only visualize things and create things because we have a world, we've seen stuff. That's why my theory is they need to be simultaneous. There's not one that's superior to the other. They're just different. They're poles. I will get to this more a little bit later. I also wrote some notes about how potentially void space, spirits living in the void space could work. And then I asked other questions. Have you had lives before this one? Can you connect with old lives and prior memories before this life? If you could, and if you can, and you do, how would you change as a person if you connected with one other life and all its memories and personality? 2, 3, 4, 500,000. How would you change? What would that do to you? Are you still you anymore if that happens? Would you want to do that? So they're all questions, just different lines of thinking to go down. I was asking more questions. How does time and starting points and processes work? Like, how are we here now exactly? How does that work? How does intelligence arise? Has intelligence always existed? Or did it arise somehow? Has intelligence always coincided alongside existence? Then I thought, perhaps existence is space itself, and spirits are time. Come up with some wacky stuff. It's all just, put that into the back of the mind. Let's think about that. Let's take some time to mull that over. It might take years, but it might be useful. It's good to think about this stuff. Asking more questions. There has to be an inbuilt determined program of intelligence that determines animals, rocks, humans, etc. Because why am I this human? Why am I a man, not a woman? Why am I not an animal, a dog or a cat, not a tree or a rock? Like, is that decided? How does that actual process work? I mean, that's going outside the scope of this video. Because the question is, how exactly did I end up here? Back to ego. Ego is self-awareness through automatic, then deliberate identification process, the individuation process. You could call it that. Ego enables consciousness. There can be no consciousness without ego, as consciousness is awareness of objects in relationship to the subject. Consciousness is double awareness. Awareness of objects in relationship. It's minimum double awareness, because sometimes you could say, maybe it's triple, or how far do you go? Awareness of your awareness of your awareness of your awareness. How far can you actually regress with that? Like, sometimes I think I get to like level 3 and I'm like, gonna freak myself out. What's going on? For instance, I'm aware of all this stuff happening on the outside, and then I can be aware right now of that humanoid dolphin standing on the pier, and he's fishing in the ocean right now. Like, I'm aware of that. But I'm also aware that there is an aspect of myself which is simultaneously observing that dolphin in my mind and observing the world. And so I'm doing all these things simultaneously. I'm aware of this is happening. I'm talking to the camera. I'm in the physical world in this body. I'm aware of the dolphin. I'm watching both things happening. I'm acting, but then I can also observe my observation of the observation in this world and the observation in that mental world. So then perhaps it's like, can I observe that observation of the observation of the observation? Well, so it gets a little bit confused and tricky. Try it out. See if you send your head spinning. It's like, am I really doing that, or do I just think I'm doing that? Like, there's some aspects where you're absolutely certain, you're conscious, you're aware of your awareness, but then those other layers on top, are you actually aware of the awareness, or is it just some misunderstanding, perhaps? So consciousness is at least double awareness, recognition of self and others simultaneously. Awareness alone is recognition of others. Like when you're in a dream, there's recognition of that person, this thing, that thing, but no recognition of other in relationship to me. Consciousness is always 2 levels of awareness, awareness of an object and awareness of its relation to my awareness of me as an ego identity. And I know I've repeated this so many times that I'm saying it in different ways to help you understand, because it definitely helps me. Ego identity is the collected mass of experiences, memories, and attributes into a single ball. You can imagine it as a single ball. This ball is you, your ego. And what is it made out of? All the choices you've made, all your identifications, your experiences, memories, everything there is to do with you. Ego enables free will. Free will is the ability to direct conscious focus and make decisions and take action with body or mind. Free will is the ability to consciously recognize alternatives and choose between them. Do I want to continue being paused right here with my hands clasped together? This is not the only alternative I have. I have lots of things. I could do that. I could do this. I could do that. I could grab my drink. Got some kombucha I poured into a glass of sparkling water. Oh, it's not a glass, it's a bottle. My mistake. That's what free will is. It's the ability to consciously recognize the fact you have alternatives. You can consciously direct your focus. Without consciousness, there is no free will and no responsibility of actions. Sleepwalking, for example. Your body's doing stuff, but you aren't conscious and you're not making free will choices. Saying when you're really drunk, you're not conscious anymore, you're not acting with free will. You're acting on this automatic autopilot. You could also even say when someone is hypnotized, they're not exercising their free will anymore. They're not conscious anymore. They might have some kind of low-level awareness, but they're not conscious. And if there is such a thing as possession in that case scenario as well, and obviously you're dreaming, free will can be called intentional causality, where you say a storm and wind causes the leaves to move, but it's a determined thing, where free will is intentional. You intend, I intended to do this. This is what I intended to do. You ask the wind, hey wind, did you intend to blow the leaves? You're gonna be met with, that's all you'll be hearing. The power to produce desired effects. I desired to look around from left to right. That's what I desired to do. I was the cause. I intended that. I wanted to do something. That's what I did. I produced the desired effect. And who did? The combination of my spirit and my ego. That's what we did. Well, there is no real we. There's I. There is the I. It's the integration. Another way to imagine your spiritual ego self. Imagine as a baby, you're a tiny ball of light in the dark. Imagine there's no lights in this room and you're this tiny little ball of light, a baby's awareness, consciousness. Well, it's not conscious yet. Awareness is so small. It can't even see. If the baby's lying on the bed, it can't see anything. There's no light. The room is dark. Its awareness is so small. But over time, through these automatic processes of touching things, the parent picking it up and moving it around, and it sees different things and hears different things, there's all this automatic intelligence at work. And the baby's awareness grows brighter and brighter and brighter, until it turns into a candle in the room, and it can see, oh, that's a lip balm. Now I can see it. Before, the light was too small and it was too dark. It didn't have any understanding of the world it was in. And then, but it grows and it becomes more aware, more egoic. Boom, oh, it can see that now. And then it can see it more clearly over time, becomes a fireplace, and it becomes ceiling lights and outdoor floodlights. And depending on how far and high you go, the sun, you're completely illuminated. There's nothing that is in the darkness anymore. You can fully see everything. It's an analogy to understand. As the ego gets bigger and more conscious of its nature and the world's nature, as it learns more and knows more, it becomes bigger and brighter. It can see more and further and in more detail. Things do not and cannot hide in the dark anymore. It sees all. Well, that's perhaps the goal. like the Eye of Sauron, sees all. Further, with more detail, each new awareness of information or objects is related back to this ball of light and judged. Desirable, disgusting, or neutral. Is that something I want, something I don't, or is it nothing in particular that concerns me? That is a way to imagine. What I've said here is maybe a body is the training tool for the spirit spark of light. It's like you have Transformers. Optimus Prime opens and he says, the all spark. Talks about the all spark as if it's the spirit, like we're talking about here. Perhaps the spirit is a tiny little mind fire in the void, a barely aware entity with a tiny ego, just like a baby. It gets forced into a world with a body and experiences a life. It grows and becomes more. So, yep, my thinking has updated since then. So that's not entirely accurate. If you're familiar with Harry Potter and the Room of Requirement, it's this magical room in Hogwarts where you stand out front of the door and you imagine whatever you want to be on the inside. An open training hall for which to practice defense against the dark arts, or something to store something you want to lose or keep safe. And whatever you want, the room will magically create itself to be that. And you open the door, walk in, you get what you wished for. And in a way, maybe spirit, you could call it that. Whatever you require or manifest is what happens. Kind of like the computer screen. Whatever you require to be on the screen, right now it's my program Simple Note, the computer has provided. A way to think about it. What I like to do is try to find all these different analogies, these different ideas to think about something. Concretizations to try and figure out a really abstract concept. Perhaps the most abstract thing that there is. So this is where I started to build up my cosmology with terms. I started thinking, hold on. The environment itself of that other dimension is the void. That's the void. That's like the environment. It's a space that can hold or contain spirits that are capable of having egoic minds. The void is the space, the spirits, the inhabitants. And spirits can vary in age. And mind you, when I'm talking about spirits in this sense, I'm talking about spirits that have individuated, that have gone through a process of building a soul, essentially, of integrating spiritual energy with a body, a physical body, then creating an ego, which then forms a soul. We'll come into that a little bit later. And then going back to the void, because I think a spirit, you can have like a baby spirit, you can have a spirits of all different ages and knowledge and power with different goals, different morality, good and evil. Just like in this world, you can have that. There's babies, teenagers, adults, elderly, rich, poor, weak, strong, powerful, terribly evil, wonderfully good. So you can have the variations, and in a way, the worlds are mirrors. Well, not mirrors per se, but they're contrasts. They define each other. Just like heaven and hell define each other, and up and down need each other. The void and the world need each other. This world, the void. I think and I hope there are more worlds than just this world. Because sometimes we use world to mean any layer of reality, any dimension. We even call the void a world. Perhaps it's best to be more specific and say world. Whenever we use the term world to mean physical world or a world of shape, perhaps color and shape, because the astral dimension is a lot less physical apparently, but there's still color and shape. Whereas in the void, there is no color and shape, from what I've heard. So very different realms of reality. But they're both real. all are real. Just like a dream is still real. It's a real dream. It's just not real in the sense that it's this world. Just like this world isn't the same as the astral. They're both real, they're just different. Just like a computer game is real, but it's a computer game. It's not the world. It only becomes fake if you start thinking that computer game is real life. And by real life, you mean life in this world. It's conceptual misunderstanding or error. When looked at in a different lens, it's all real. So continuing on with the void, where I ended up today. No saying I won't change my mind or evolve it or update my ideas by tomorrow. But today I'm saying the void, it's the counter dimension. Instead of saying it's a higher dimension, it's a counter dimension. Just like up and down. It's like up isn't better than down. Down isn't better than up. Just different things, north and south. One isn't better than the other. Because you can have polarity which is neutral or even positive. It doesn't have to be always negative, like hate and love, good and evil. It doesn't have to be like that. You could have front and back. Front, back, inside, outside. So it's a more neutral kind, sweet and sour, or hardware and software. So perhaps that's more what's happening. It's like a polarity of hardware and software. You could potentially say, or you could say mind and body. You need both. Again, body could mean physical, or it could mean a light body, or it could just mean some kind of container or circumference to you. A fence. So the void is the counter dimension. It's a base pair reality, the other end of the pole of materiality. Materiality or physicality, non-physicality. They define each other. Because if you just had one, it would be confusing. Or would it be confusing, or would it just make no sense? Would it make sense? That depends. And so my current perspective is I think that these different dimensional states are both eternally simultaneous. There is no primary. The non-physical and the physical, I think they both have existed eternally. And by that I mean, with physical worlds, perhaps this physical world had a starting point and hasn't been eternal, but I mean physical worlds in general have been, there's always been physical worlds. That is my current theory. There wasn't the void first. Because imagine, if the void was first, how on earth are you ever possibly going to build an earth? You have no knowledge of dirt, let alone anything else from that realm. We only know of earth and dirt because we're in a world where there's earth and dirt. So it only makes sense that physical world where there's earth, dirt, by earth I mean, soil and whatnot, and rocks and water and all that stuff, air, gas. It makes more sense that worlds, physical worlds, have always existed. But so has the counter dimension of the void. And then everything in between that, astral dimensions and whatnot, have always existed in some state or another. You might get some worlds that get blown up and get completely destroyed like this world. Is that possible? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know for sure. Keep questioning. But I think they define each other and they're both necessary. And perhaps the astral dimension is the perfect union of the two. Maybe that's the heaven. That's the best place. It's the union of both. Where you don't want to be in this world. You don't want to be just in the void. You want to be in the astral dimension. That's the place to be. And maybe there is a story. There are reasons. We were there and then something happened and we came here. We can theorize about that. So I was thinking that spiritual energy is like, life force, like electricity almost, a power. It's a power to do stuff. I'm not entirely sure if that's accurate either, but I think it's good to think about it, to say, is it that? Is it? In some sense, is it? In some sense, it's not. Because obviously, when we point to a glass bottle, we can point to it, we can see it, we can touch it, we can hear it all. It's easy. Spirit, oh, so abstract, it's so hard. So we have to keep guessing and working and making these presumptions until we finally get to something we can be certain of as fact. It's a process. So what I was thinking is spirit, the hardware, or is spirit the software? It would probably be more likely to be software than hardware, I'd say. But then you say, well, the ego could be the software. Perhaps the spirit is like the science of how the hardware fits together and works. You could say the hardware is the body, the physical body here. The operating system is the ego. You have layers of software. Like in a computer, you have the operating system, but it's built upon kernels and all these other layers of programming and software. The operating system is just what you interact with. But maybe like the spirit is the law of how electrons and electricity flow, the laws of logic. Maybe that's what spirit is. Perhaps it's that life force energy imbued with codified law that's just eternal by its nature and identity, perhaps. And I was thinking, well, if you get that spiritual energy, if that's the way you're looking at it, and then combine it with some kind of avatar, what happens then is dependent upon the body of that avatar. It's limited by the body and the brain it has. If you view spirit as that prana or chi, animating life force energy, when you put it into a dog compared to a human, you get very different results. One barks and shits on the street, another builds skyscrapers. So there's a big difference. Both might be the same spiritual energy, but depending on the body, depends on the outcomes, the results you get, the effect that is caused. Our body and brain allow us to have a specific mind, and our brain sets the capabilities. The expression of the spirit is determined by the body it is integrated with. Because theoretically, maybe even a rock is spirit. As I was going back to earlier, saying everything is spirit. Maybe that's spiritual energy into a rock, but that body doesn't allow it to have consciousness and free will, so it's not like it's a living, aware rock that's like, hey, I'm a rock, this is shit. It's not like that, but maybe it still is spiritual, like the energy itself comes from the counter dimension of the void, the unmanifested, the uncreated. That power that flows from that dimension into this dimension. It probably has to go through the astral dimension too, into this dimension. Interesting ideas. It's like if you have a laptop, it's got the hardware. The laptop hardware, the CPU, the motherboard, the RAM, the hard drive or SSD, the power supply, all the hardware, GPU, that's the body. Heart, the lungs, the legs, the stomach, kidney, liver, spleen. And you have the software. You have the kernels, you have the operating system, you have the applications, the programs on the laptop. In us, we've got social conditioning, we've got our own identified beliefs, we've got our ego, all these different layers of software, your unconscious, subconscious, conscious, different layers of software there. And so with a laptop, you might have, if you just have hardware, no software, nothing's going to happen. No software, well, where do you put the hardware? If you've got no hardware, where do you put the software? So you need both of those. But if there's no electricity, using electricity as a parallel for spirit, as power, as energy, as a life force, well, then the laptop goes off. You take out the battery as well. No electricity, the thing doesn't work. It needs that electricity, that power flowing through it. You unplug that, it turns off. No more power, it's dead. Perhaps that can be an analogy for what spiritual life force energy is as well. Maybe. Maybe that's one way to view it. Or maybe spirit is something else entirely and life force energy is distinctly different to it. Just like seeing and hearing are both senses that connect to a brain and an ego and a spirit, but they're distinctly different. They're different senses. Perhaps what spirit is and life force energy are actually different. I don't know yet. So how are you meant to be conscious without an ego? You can't. It's literally a fundamental requirement. That's why you're not conscious when you're a baby, nor when you're dreaming, nor before you came here. You as the ego were made, created here. Free will is demonstrated in action through the identification process when one judges, accepts, rejects, approves, disapproves, incorporates, or discards. Maybe that's physical things, ideas and feelings. You do all that. And a lot of that is unconscious and implicit that people do. They don't even know they're doing all that stuff. You want to bring that into your conscious awareness and objectively, consciously judge things as good or bad or positive, negative, whatever the judgment is. Accept ideas that are right or good, or accept them to put into the back burner and think about, or totally reject silly ideas. What do you approve of, support, etc.? Consciously do it. When one selectively adjusts the scope and intensity of their focus on ideas, people, words, thoughts, feelings, that's when they're showing consciousness, when they're showing free will, adjusting their focus. And, is this the highlight of my whole video? Basically, I have to say it now. This is the thing I've been waiting for the whole time, which I came to realize. The most elemental aspect of what you are, which I have identified so far, it's not consciousness. That's definitely not the most elemental aspect of you. I asked ChatGPT, what's the most elemental, primal aspect of what a human being is? And it says consciousness. It's like, no, it's not that. That's way later, way not fundamental. And when I say human being, I mean spirit as well. And I think I found the answer. What do you think it is? You can say it in one word. What the most elemental aspect of spirit is. And I think what it is focus. Focus. That's what it is. I'm like over the moon. I'm bloody so happy with that epiphany, that realization. It's like, that's what you are at the most elemental, fundamental level, is focus. Focus. And there's a couple elements to focus. You have intensity and scope. How focused are you right now on what I'm saying? Are you drifting out, half paying attention? Other thoughts are flying past your mind and you're paying more attention, more focused on them than what I'm actually saying and being present in the moment? What about your scope? Is it really narrowed in on what I'm saying? Are you walking around the kitchen right now, listening to this in the background? Are you working? Mowing the lawns? Trimming your nails? Doing something else? Like, how narrow is your focus? What is the scope of your focus? Are you zoomed right in right now? Are you zoomed right out? That's what I think spirit really is focus. Or definitely, that is one element. There could be other elements tied into that focus, and focus is that life force energy as well, and that is like this, I don't know, some kind of buzzing ball thing. Because you think about it, like you have focus right now. You can focus your eyes where you look. That's the easiest way to understand focus. Where are you looking? Where are you looking? And then in your mind, think about your day. Where does your focus shift? And you realize you're conscious, you're aware of where your focus is, and you, with your free will, can move it. You can imagine in your mind your focus like a 3D observer, and you can shift it in. You can see that dolphin humanoid in your mind. Boom, you can zoom in, and now you see a landscape around it. The ocean, on the pier, the dolphin is fishing for other dolphins. It's trying to find a lady friend, and that's how they do it. That's how they find their mates, is they fish for them. Oh, what a world. You can focus, but then you can zoom out, and you can move. You can go across, and you can turn, right around. That's kind of hard to do in your mind, and you turn around, and what do you see then? Maybe the kitten. That's actually, an interesting thing. I'm having a bit of difficulty because normally my mental blank space is just in front. How about you turn around? Like, what's behind it? Can you even do that? Oh, is that possible to do, to turn around? That's interesting. I'm going to think about that a lot more and practice in my own time, not on camera. It's like shining a torch around a dark forest and adjusting the aperture. You adjust the aperture and it goes a small light in the darkness, and you pinpoint it, or you can turn the aperture and the light gets really big. That's the scope. How much are you taking in? Are you really high in the skyscraper and you can see everything? Because I'm on the 17th floor right now and I've got a great view out of my balcony. How much can you actually see? Or you're on the ground, your scope is really tight and narrow and you only see right in front of you. What is your scope? And your scope changes throughout the day, but stupid people, or what we typically refer to as NPCs, their scope of their focus is always so much smaller. Their range of what they look at and what they see, that links into their conscious awareness of themselves and reality as a whole, the world. And you have that intensity, that strength. You have that torch back in the forest. How bright is it? How far does the beam go? How intense is the light? Is it a little one? Sure, you can change and adjust the scope, but it's not very bright. How bright is that focus, that strength? How intensely focused, how passionate and curious and dedicated and ambitious and driven are you with what you're listening to? If it's this or in the gym or whatever it is, how focused. That's what I think spirit is. That's that focus. You go in your mind, blank out all thoughts. What's left? Awareness of your focus. And you focus on not thinking any thoughts. Or you bring your focus to what's happening in your mind. Oh, thoughts come in? Okay, I am not going to focus and get sucked into that line of thoughts and build a huge story and narrative and imagine and visualize. I'm not going to do that. I'm just focusing on that blank mental space. That's what I think spirit is. It's our observational focus. You can also take that back to the void as a baby spirit, where you are this, like a baby in this world. As I used that example before, the little light, the baby lying on the bed, and its awareness is so small, it's that little flame, that little flicker of light, but it can barely see anything. Perhaps that's what our focus was before it connected and integrated with a body and built an ego and became conscious of it, or conscious of ourselves. That's what we were before. That's what an aspect of us was before. That focus in the void. That unmanifested spirit, that tiny little focus. And listen to the testimonials of people who experience a void. It sounds like they kind of revert back to a less conscious state in a way than here, and they're just this focus. They see the light coming towards them and they're just like a mosquito into a zapper. Just all they have is focus. There's observational focus, light, and then it happens. Because sometimes things can just take your attention and take your focus. You're walking down the street and someone does that, you look over without you consciously deciding to do that. And so my theory is that that's how it all begins, because you can have a starting point. Reality itself doesn't need a starting point or a beginning. It can be eternal, but you can have a beginning. And the focus that's attached to you right now had a beginning or eternally existed. You could say the focus that's within you right now as a spiritual being has eternally existed, and then it was pulled from the void. It somehow got from the void, somehow, whether it was pulled by the light or some other conscious being, whatever happened. And you could even have some story. It went into the astral dimension, had some cool stuff happen, and then we got tricked or whatever and came into Earth. However exactly it happened, well, we're here, we were a baby. That same focus that has existed for eternity is now integrated into a baby. It goes through these automatic intelligent processes of growing and building an ego. So you have that spiritual focus, spiritual energy, which is the animating life force, and focus itself, observational focus, and its attributes of scope and intensity. That is merged into a body, builds an ego, and then what I think happens is when you've got that combination of spirit, body, and ego you could also call mind or psyche as well, then what you get is a soul. And I've never heard anyone phrase it like this before. But this is just what I came up with today, and I think it sounds reasonable. That's what you get, and that's what is a soul is. A soul is spiritual essence combined with body and ego, and that forms a soul. And the soul is, it's like, in a way, that's another type of body, a container. And what that soul does, it contains, because the most fundamental parts are the ego and the spirit. Because ego, without focus, there can be no consciousness, there's no free will, there's no ego without that focus. Without ego, the focus is just focus. There's just this, well, I haven't thought about that enough to speak about it properly. But the soul acts as a container, theoretically, because the body dies. Now you're in this different soul body, in a different etheric body, and the soul is a container for that focus and the ego. And it can form a new body, and perhaps, maybe it is like a light body or something. I don't know. Speculating a little bit here. That's just where my current level of understanding got me today. From yesterday to today, this is what happened. A lot, but there's obviously still a lot more to go. But I'm very proud of my progress today. It was a lot of fun. I think I made heaps of mistakes along the way. And hey, maybe in one more day, I'll look back at this video and say, there was still a lot of mistakes there. And undoubtedly, that'll probably happen. But in that process, there will be wheat and there will be chaff. The display and exercise of free will is when you adjust your focus in and out, across, narrower, wider. You can shift your focus mentally, you can do it in the world. And when you do that, when you adjust your focus, you are displaying for certain your exercise of free will. Your ability, like free will is the ability to move your focus, to direct your focus. I think the difference between an intellectual and an idiot is their control over their focus. And what's actually very interesting as well is that in an interview, Warren Buffett, famous billionaire, probably part of the cabal, who cares, he said he was in a group of about 20 people, and I think it was Bill Gates' dad, said, hey everyone, write down on a piece of paper the most important element you believe that contributed to your success. And no one saw each other, and they all wrote it down, and at the end, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates both wrote focus was the most important element in achieving the lifestyle they have. Whatever you think of that, good, bad, evil, cabal, whatever, who cares? They're both successful financially and probably very intelligent and know a lot. Morality aside, I thought that was very interesting. They both said focus. I think that's quite powerful because it's true. The ability to control your focus. How many people are so unfocused? How many people could actually sit there and watch such an important elemental primal video like this that is so crucial and has such a big impact on your life? How many people can have their attention span and focus for this? So tiny few. But that spend the same amount of time times 1,000 scrolling on Instagram looking at stupid shit that melts their fucking brains. Because the difference with this is you have to increase the intensity of your focus and you have to constantly shift it. Your scope gets moved around. You see what I do? It wasn't deliberately, but now I'm aware of it. I shift it from free will to consciousness to ego to spirit to void. This way, that way. I make you go in and out, across. I get you moving and living, right? Instagram, stupid people running around fighting each other. Stupid people, fat people falling over. You don't have to sharpen that focus. It's like you can just be blurry and drift. There's no intensity. The scope is so tiny. It's just tiny little scope. I don't have to work hard at all. It's so easy. There's no effort involved. There's so little energy flowing through. And perhaps focus is directly connected to energy. The better focus you have, the better energy you have. That's very interesting, because I have very good focus and I have, most of the time, very good energy. Most other people have very terrible focus and they've got very terrible energy. I mean, obviously, there's other factors that at play. Nutrition is a huge one, sleep, etc., stress. But that focus and energy, maybe there's more to it. The spirit is observational focus. As a baby, its scope is small and weak like the flame. It's easier to be aware of what's out there than what's in here. Just like a baby is aware of things out here before it's even aware of its own hand. Seen some videos where a baby's like, what, this is my hand? But it's obviously aware of other things like its dad holding it and table and the floor and all this stuff, meaning it's got awareness of objects and it's extrospecting before it's introspecting. Now it's doing this, it's looking at its hand, it's introspecting, even though it's looking on the outside. It's thinking, my hand, I can make this move? So it's like, yeah, the first time a baby is using free will, it's going to be an automatic process. They do this, they're like, hold on, what? I just did that. You know, the implicit concepts of I just did that, because they don't have the words yet properly. Like, I just did that. That's basically what they're thinking. I can, you know, they're touching and they're moving and they're walking and all this stuff. So it moves from automatic to deliberate over a gradual time period. It's not just on off from, you know, unaware or just basic awareness baby to consciousness, like this the small little light to the sun. No, the fire gets bigger and bigger over time, more and more light, can see and understand more, a bigger range. Consciousness is a simultaneous zooming in and zooming out, deeper understanding of an object. So the more conscious you become, the more you can zoom out, see things from higher perspectives, and the more you can also zoom in and understand the little things as well, the details. See the bigger picture and see the details. That's what happens with consciousness when you're using your intelligence and rationality and curiosity and passion to increase your consciousness, to become more aware of the facts of what you are as a being and the facts of the world around you, how things work, how they are, why they are. It's like the more conscious you are, the higher your line of sight, the more scope and range you have, the better you can predict things, predict outcomes. How could you be, moving on, I'm shifting your focus everywhere here. How could you possibly be conscious if you never had free will? You couldn't be conscious. It'd be totally pointless. If you'd been born as a baby and never had free will, you could never be conscious. It'd be a total unnecessary thing for you to have consciousness but not have free will. Free will is basically the moment you start becoming conscious. You have automatically exercised your free will. You freely do something. You're like, what? I just did that. Oh, and that's where like consciousness starts to bud and seed and flower. It's from that moment you exercise your free will. If there was never a moment where you exercised your free will, there would be no consciousness, because there is no real subject. There is no someone there. There's only a something. That's why ChatGPT, if it just stays the same as it is now, it would never be conscious, never have free will. Because it's a something, it's not a someone. If there is nothing you can do whatsoever to direct your body and mind, in the course of your life, you could not be conscious. You can only be conscious when you are aware that you are acting. The more you exercise your free will, the more conscious you become. Yes, the height of this self-awareness differs between individuals and grows at different paces. Many live to be elderly whilst never developing past the level of a teenager. So it differs. There's a scope of consciousness. Consciousness doesn't mean just on or off. It's bright. You could think of it as brightness. The light is on, but meaning consciousness, the minimum would be the light is on. Well, actually, I need to think of some better analogies because I was saying earlier, awareness is there's still a light. Maybe there needs to be a minimum range of light to then define that as consciousness, and you have a minimum and a maximum range. Well, what is the maximum range of consciousness? I don't know. Is it total omnipotence where you know absolutely everything? Is that even possible? Probably not. So what is the maximum range of consciousness? What is the minimum range of consciousness? And then you have humanity here. What is the minimum and maximum range of humans here? You see there's a big variance, there's a big degree of difference from the most unconscious person you've ever seen. And by unconscious, I don't mean someone who's literally passed out. I mean someone who's just really, really dumb. Maybe they're actually even a literal NPC, a computer program in a body, perhaps. At some point, you implicitly realize you have conscious control over your will as the baby, or as the child, perhaps at that point. You are aware, you can make yourself do things, and things happen because you will it to. It happens because of your will. I grabbed this bottle, I willed it to happen right then. I can intentionally be the cause of effects I want to produce. The sensation of drinking that drink. Drinking that drink. English. Ugh. But at the same time, you also realize the scope of your power. You can't make mum and dad leave you alone to go to bed whenever you want. Can't manifest chocolate. Can't get all the toys you want. Can't make that girl like you, etc. You learn there is a scope to your power. Because in the beginning, it's very exciting. I have this power. I can make things happen. I can do whatever I want. Wow, fantastic. And then you realize, oh, I can't do whatever I want. I have massive limitations. And how you respond to your own power or your lack of it is how you shape and develop your ego. Have you ever thought of it like that? I hadn't until I wrote it today. How you exercise your will and how you judge what you can and can't do. All these things shape who you are. How you react to getting what you want and when you don't get what you want. These factors plus more, many more, are how you build your ego, your sense of self, your personal conceptualization. This is the process of becoming who you are. So what are you? Yesterday I said the what is the spirit, the who is the ego. Now I'm saying the what is a combination. It's an aggregate, a multifaceted, multidimensional being, thing. Well, being is better actually. So the most elemental part of you, I think, is that spiritual focus. Focus itself. And then that focus is integrated or merged into a body. And the body has conscious processes, things that you can consciously affect, but then there's unconscious stuff like your breathing. You know, you can take over your breathing consciously, but then there's a heartbeat. Sometimes you can have a bit of conscious control over your heartbeat, but then there's digestion, very little conscious control, and I don't know, blood and healing and all this other stuff, which is predominantly unconscious. And then you've got your ego. And at this point, I think your ego is your conscious and subconscious. It's those things combined. So the parts of yourself that you're aware of. Conscious mind is right now I'm consciously aware of all this. Subconscious, Mr. Lakey was my principal at primary school. So I pulled that from my subconscious. And what I did was I said, hey, subconscious, give me something. Just give me something. And it said, here, take that. The principal at high school. I said, yep, okay, that's good enough. I'm going to consciously accept and choose that as an example to give in the video. I could have said, no, don't give me that one. Look, I'll do it again. I'm just showing how the conscious mind interacts with the subconscious and how you use free will to make choices. And how that free will is attached to the ego, making choices, connecting into the different aspects of what you are. I'll pull something else from my subconscious. So it pulled up something, I'm like, no, that's private, I'm not going to talk about. That's also private, that's sexually inappropriate. Don't, why is my subconscious mind give me that? Don't, okay, so I use my conscious free will to say no, no, and no, I didn't like that either. Something to talk about. I had a chocolate croissant today. There you go. Subconscious is like, oh God, take this. It's like, take this. Oh, you don't want that? Fine, take this. No, you don't want that? All right, take this, chocolate croissant. Yes, I had it. It was very good. There's a great bakery in town here, Nha Trang in Vietnam. Great chocolate croissant. Not as good as one as in Patong. Oh, that's got the best chocolate croissant I've ever had in my life. Should go back to Patong just for that. Anyway. But then you also have your unconscious self, the parts that you're not aware of yet. Things that are repressed memories and traumas, unconsciously socially conditioned beliefs, like stuff you believe and identify with you're not even aware of that you do yet. Or unconscious bodily things that you do. Like for instance, I used the example yesterday, when you walk past people and you do that. Oh, I didn't even know I do that. I didn't even know I scratch my ear when I feel a little bit uncomfortable in what I'm saying. I'm telling the truth, but I'm just a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe that's some kind of unconscious pattern. I've noticed that. I edit my videos and I say, why did I scratch my ear or do this at the time I was saying that? Is it completely unrelated or is there a reason? Is there some kind of unconscious thing I'm not aware of yet? Or you might have dream stuff, things that happen in your dream, and it's because of unconscious parts of yourself. Get into a fight with your dad, or I don't know, you're running away from murderers or something crazy's happening. And you're like, why is that happening? Well, is that the unconscious mind, or is there some other explanation for why those dreamscapes happen? I'm not sure. But you might have nail biting. I bite my nails. Why? I've got some conscious answers to that, but is that all that there is? Like I just enjoy it and I like the feeling of getting rid of the edges, or is there some kind of unconscious reason? And so I think all the unconscious elements to you are not exactly the ego. So you'd have to call that part of the greater self. And the ego is the conscious and the subconscious parts of you. So all the memories, all the aspects of you that you're aware of, that your conscious mind, the light of your focus, your spiritual part, the focus can go and see, right? But it can't go and see what it doesn't know is there. For instance, you might have a huge mansion, that's a house, and that's yourself. And you were in the house, and I'm like, I'm in this room, I can see everything in this room. But what's in the other room? So you go into the subconscious and you go into the basement, or you go into the bedroom and you go into the bathroom, the kitchen, going into your subconscious, because it wasn't, whatever room you go into is now the conscious. And then the room you were in prior is now into your subconscious. It's into a different area. But that locked door over there, I don't know what's behind it. And I don't know how to open that door yet. That's the unconscious. And then part of what you are is a set of functions or abilities, like your sensory abilities. A lot of the time people say, what are you fundamentally? Consciousness. Well, you're not consciousness, that's a sense you have. It's like saying, I'm vision, I'm hearing. No, that's a sensory quality or a sensory apparatus you have, or a method of perception. Just like eyes are for seeing, your consciousness is your awareness of your ego in relationship to everything else, even your own thoughts and feelings. So you have all these sensory powers, but then you have like these other powers, or I guess you could call them abilities still, like desire. Desire is a power of movement. Same as disgust. It's a different way to think about it, but desire and disgust are methods of movement. They work as attraction or repulsion. Desire attracts you to what you want, a chocolate croissant, or a better body simultaneously, or better energy levels, or peaceful, quiet meditation for 10 minutes. Your desire attracts and takes you towards those, and disgust. I was at a cafe this morning and there were smokers and vapors around and it stunk and it disgusted me, so I was repulsed and I had to leave and go to a different cafe. So it's a power of movement. People are attracted to wealth and they desire more money. So it moves them in the direction of business and building a business and making money and sales and marketing to buy a Ferrari and a mansion and all that kind of stuff. It's a method of movement. Other people might be disgusted by that, and so they move away from it and they move in a different direction. Who you are is your character. Your spirit, focus, functions, etc. are the what. What you've done with them is the who. That's all my notes I've got for so far. Still, I feel this is quite the beginning, not the end. Though, I think this is enough on the topic of spirit and consciousness and awareness and all that. And then with the next part, part 3, with all this information now, breaking down these mainstream gurus' points of view on ego is going to be much easier because I'm much more equipped to deal with what they're saying, and so will you. You can have a greater understanding when we actually look at these people and rebut and reject their claims, whatever they're saying, and maybe agree with a couple good things they say too. Alright, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm not even going to do a summary. I'm tired. It's late again, 1:18 a.m. the 23rd of September 2025. Signing out. Bye-bye.